I do not need to walk into a room to be at work in it. My child, I have granted requests I never traveled toward. I have crossed distances I never walked. I have finished matters I never stood close enough to touch. Word gets to places I have never physically stood. Not once. The right to give orders does not need a presence in the doorway to be real. It never did. A command carries its full weight at 3 feet. It carries the same weight at 3 countries. That is true right now, in whatever room you happen to be sitting in as you hear this. Distance has never once slowed a word of mine down. Not by a day, not by an hour. I have proven that so many times I stopped keeping a private tally of it. You have not noticed most of them. They did not look like power in the moment. They looked like nothing changing. A room you were watching too closely, waiting on a feeling that was not going to show up the way you had planned, watching the door instead of trusting the word already inside the house. Here is what I want to say to you as you hear this, before anything else gets said between us. The word I already spoke over your life is not waiting on me. It is not waiting on me to walk through your door before it starts working. It went out already. It is doing what I said it would do. Right now, in the room you are standing in. Whether you feel one single thing in that room or not, I know how that sounds. You were taught this without anyone teaching it to you on purpose. That my presence has a temperature, a weight you can locate in your chest, a hush that falls when I arrive, the way a room changes when someone important enters it. So you have spent years checking for the hush, waiting for the weight, checking, then checking again, reading the absence of a feeling as the absence of me, as if I only exist in a house once I have physically crossed its threshold. A man in an old story never let me cross his threshold at all, not because he doubted me, because he understood something about the way a command moves. Almost no one in his own country understood it. Almost no one in yours understands it now. I'm going to tell you exactly what he said, in his own words, in a moment. But first, feel the shape of what he was actually doing. It is not what you were taught it was. He did not ask me to rush. He did not ask me to prove anything. Not by showing up. He had a servant at home. He had a request he could have made 100 easier ways. He chose the hardest one on purpose. He told me not to come, plainly, without apology. Not many people in any century have had the nerve to say that to me. Most people want the visit. Most people measure whether I care by whether I show up in a form they can see, a feeling they can name, a moment they can point to later and say, "That is when I knew he was here." This man did not want a visit. He wanted a word. That is what changes everything. 2 ways of living came out of that one choice, and only one of them could hold real weight when something heavy finally leaned on it. I am not telling you this to make you feel behind. I am telling you because the same offer is standing in front of you right now, in the room you are actually in. You get to answer it the way he did, or the way almost everyone else in the story answered it instead. Most of them chose the visit. Most of them are still waiting for one. Some of them will wait their whole lives. That is not a threat. It is simply what happens when a person keeps holding out for a feeling that was never the actual proof. The proof does not arrive as a feeling. It arrived as a word, already, and it has been standing in your house this entire time. You have a private test you run, and you have never once written it down, because writing it down would mean admitting you have one. You wait to feel something before you let yourself believe it is true. Not a small feeling, an exact one. A tightening behind your sternum. A sudden calm that drops in from nowhere and settles your shoulders before you have consciously asked for it. A chill on your arms in a warm room. The kind you cannot explain, the kind you have decided means something is real. When it comes, you believe. When it does not come, you assume the opposite. You assume silence. You assume distance. You assume I stepped out of the room for a while and have not yet come back in. You have knelt down on purpose, waiting for the shiver. It did not come. You sat with your hand still on the wheel after the call that changed your week, waiting for the calm to drop in before you would let yourself exhale. It did not drop in on schedule. You have read a whole chapter twice, slower the second time, hunting for the sentence that would finally feel like it was written for you, specifically in this exact season of your life, and both times you closed the book with the same flat nothing you started with. So you filed it, quietly, under proof. Not proof that the words were false, proof in your private ledger that they had not reached you yet. Here is the part you have never said out loud, not even to yourself in the exact words. You have built your whole capacity to trust me around a physical event you cannot control, predict, or summon on command. You are asking your own nervous system to confirm theology. You are asking a chill on your arm to do the work a promise was already doing. And your nervous system, being what it is, some days delivers the chill and some days does not, for reasons that have nothing to do with whether I am near you and everything to do with how little sleep you got, how much coffee you drank, how loud the room around you happens to be. You check your phone screen in the dark, brightness low, scrolling for a sign, the way you used to check a barometer before a storm. You check the quiet in your own chest the same way, pressing on it slightly, testing if it holds. You have made yourself a kind of instrument, and you keep reading your own instrument as if it were mine, as if my presence were a number that shows up on your internal gauge the moment I decide to be near you. It is not. It never was built that way. Not for you. Not for anyone who has ever actually needed me to be real on a day their gauge read nothing at all. He understood this before you did, a long time before you were born, in the middle of a genuine emergency, not in some quiet moment when understanding costs nothing. He had every reason to want the feeling. He had every reason to want me standing in his doorway where he could see me with his own eyes. He asked for something else instead. What he asked for is the whole hinge of what I'm telling you today, and I want you to hear it exactly the way he said it, in his own words. Before I say one more thing about it, he was a Roman officer stationed in a town that was not his own, commanding men who did not love him, in a country that had not chosen him. He had rank. He had soldiers under him who moved when he pointed. He had a servant at home he cared about enough to go looking for help in public, which was not a small risk for a man in his position. And when he found me, he did not ask what you would expect him to ask. I had already told him plainly. I said I would come myself. I said I would walk to the house, stand in the room, finish the matter with my own hands in person, where he could watch it happen. That was my offer. I meant every word of it. Most people hearing that offer from me would have said yes before I finished the sentence. He did not say yes. Matthew chapter 8, verse 8. Here is exactly what he said back to me, word for word, the way it was recorded. Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. Read that again slowly, and notice what he is actually doing. He is not questioning my power. He is not doubting my willingness. He is turning down the visit on purpose. He is telling me, to my face, that my presence in his house is not the thing he needs from me. The word is the thing he needs. Say it from where you are standing, he is telling me. Do not walk the road. Do not cross the threshold. Speak and let the distance carry it. Think about what that costs a man to say. Everyone around him would have expected the opposite request. Come, stand here. Let me see it with my own eyes, so I never have to wonder again whether it was real. That is the ordinary human request, and it is not a foolish one. It is simply not what he asked for. He had already decided before he ever opened his mouth that my arriving in the room was not the proof he was building his trust on. Here is why. He explained it himself in the next breath, and it is the part almost no one slows down for. He told me he understood the chain of command because he lived underneath one. Soldiers under him, officers over him, a whole chain of command he had spent years inside of, long enough to know exactly how it worked. He said, in effect, I say go, and a man goes. I say come, and he comes. Not because I am standing next to him when I say it, because the word itself carries the rank. The word does not need my body, present to be obeyed. It carries what I carry the moment it leaves my mouth, wherever it lands. That is not a clever argument he invented on the spot. That is a man reading his own ordinary work, the one he had done for years without once thinking of it as theology, and recognizing in it the exact shape of what he had been serving under the whole time. He did not need a demonstration. He had already lived the principle every single day of his working life. The command travels. It does not need an escort. Listen now to what I said back to him, because it is the entire reason I am telling you this now, no matter which room you actually happen to be sitting in. I turned to the people standing around me, and I said, I had not found faith like that in anyone in the whole country. Not the crowds who followed me every day and watched every miracle up close. Not the ones who stood near enough to touch my robe. Him, the one who told me not to come. Sit with the strange shape of what actually happened there. It is easy to read past it. I offered to come. That offer was real, not a formality, not a script I say to everyone before the true business starts. I was already turning toward the road when he stopped me. The moment people preach about most, when this story gets told, is the moment of refusal, not the offer. People skip past the offer like it does not matter, like it was only the setup for the real event. It was not the setup. It was the event. Here is what almost nobody says about that exchange. The instant I said I would come, he had everything he had walked into that town to get. He did not wait for the rest. He heard the willingness and stopped asking. The way a man stops arguing the moment somebody hands him the thing he came for. My willingness was not a promise waiting on my arrival to become real. My willingness was already the whole thing. Arrival, if it had happened, would only have been the visible half of something that was already true, in the part nobody could see. He understood that split faster than most people ever do. He did not need the visible half. He had already received the part that mattered, the instant I offered it, and he trusted the offer enough to release me from finishing it his way. You have not done that. Not yet. Somewhere back down the road of your own life, I made an offer to you too. Not a visit to one house on one afternoon. Something larger, a whole pattern of never leaving, a whole pattern of finishing what concerns you, carrying what is too heavy for your own two arms, being near you on the exact days you assumed I had wandered off. That offer went out a long time ago. It did not go out quietly either. It was written down, spoken over you, sung over you before you were old enough to understand a word of it. And you have been waiting for the arrival ever since. The felt version. The version you could point to and say, there, that is when I knew he came. You have treated the offer like a down payment and the felt arrival like the real transaction, when the truth was reversed the entire time. The offer was the transaction. Everything after that is just you catching up to what was already finished. This is not a small fix. It changes what you are allowed to stop doing. You do not have to keep auditing the room for proof that I showed up in it. You do not have to treat a quiet week as proof I stepped out. You are allowed to stop taking the temperature of a room every time you walk into one. You are allowed to let a quiet week be a quiet week. It was full strength the instant it left me, and it has been full strength every single day since, in every room you have carried it into, without knowing you were carrying anything at all. Refusing the visit was never an insult to me. It was the highest form of trust available to a human being. It meant trusting me without asking me to perform belief back at him. No proof, no show. That is what I called the greatest faith I had found. Not devotion, not intensity. Trust in a word held without the comfort of watching it happen. Think about how you actually run your own days underneath the surface of them. A letter goes into the mail, and you do not stand at the mailbox for a week. to confirm it left your hand. You trust the sending. A call ends, and you do not replay the recording to make sure the other person truly meant it. You trust the word as spoken once, and you move on with your afternoon as if it were already fact, because for every practical purpose it already is. You do this constantly. You do it without noticing. 100 small trusts a day, none of them requiring a second confirmation, none of them needing to be felt twice before you believe them once. Then you get to me, and the rule quietly changes. Suddenly one hearing is not enough. Suddenly you need the feeling to arrive and confirm the word, as if the word alone were somehow less reliable than everything else you trust all day, without a second thought. Ask yourself honestly why that is. It is not because I have a worse track record than the people who send you letters and end your calls. It is because you learned, at some earlier point you cannot quite pin down, to treat closeness with me as a special category, one that requires more proof than anything else in your life ever asks of you. Nothing else gets audited the way you audit me. That double standard is not loyalty. It only looks like loyalty. It is actually a kind of fear wearing careful clothes, the fear that if you stop checking, you might discover there was nothing to check for in the first place. I am asking you to stop checking, not because checking will embarrass you, because the word was never waiting on the check to be true, and it never did. From the very first day you decided you needed it before you would believe. There is a detail in what he said that changes who this story is actually about. He did not argue for my right to be obeyed by describing me. He argued for it by describing himself. Look at the shape of his sentence again. I too am a man who takes orders, he said. That came before the part about soldiers obeying him. Under, not over. He led with his own submission, not his own rank. That ordering matters more than it looks like it does. A man who has never answered to anyone cannot recognize real power when he meets it. Not really. He can only recognize noise, size, spectacle. The outward signs people mistake for power. They mistake it because they have never stood close enough to the real thing to tell them apart. But a man who has spent years underneath a structure he did not build learns something the rest of us miss, taking orders from someone he does not always see. He learns that an order does not require presence to be obeyed. He learns it in his own body, on ordinary days, long before he ever needs the lesson for anything that matters. Think about how orders actually move through a chain like that. A command starts somewhere far away. A person the soldier at the bottom will likely never meet. In an office he has never entered. On a day he does not even know about. That word travels down through layer after layer. By the time it reaches the man standing watch at the edge of nowhere, its rank has not thinned, not even slightly. He obeys it exactly as if the one who spoke it were standing 3 feet away, watching. He does not need the source in the room to feel the weight of what the source said. The chain itself carries the weight for him. This is not only a military idea. A pilot follows a voice from a tower she cannot see, across a runway, in weather that would kill her if she guessed instead of listening. She does not require a face to trust the instruction. She learned over years that the voice does not need a body attached to it, not to be reliable. The structure holding that voice up is what she actually trusts, not the sound alone. Anyone who has spent real time inside a structure like that stops needing to see the source. They learn to hear the rank in the word itself. He recognized command in me for that exact reason. He had already learned it inside his own ordinary work. What an unseen command sounds like when it is real. That is why he did not need me in the room. Not because he understood theology better than the priest standing nearby. Because he understood chains of command, and he heard one in what I said to him. The same way you recognize a voice on the phone before the person even finishes saying their name. You have never thought of your own life as a place where this same lesson is already sitting, waiting to be noticed. But you have submitted to things you cannot see the source of, more times than you could count. You trust a signature you never watched get written. You trust a structure holding up things you rely on daily, built by people you will never meet, and you do not require their faces first. Something in you already knows how to do this. You have simply never turned it toward me. You do it without thinking. Every day. You do it so smoothly, you have stopped calling it trust at all. You just call it how things work. A word arrives. You act on it. No proof needed, no face attached, no second confirmation demanded before you move. That skill already lives inside you, fully formed. You built it over years without ever once deciding to build it on purpose. So the problem was never that you lacked the capacity to trust an unseen source. You use that capacity constantly, in 100 small corners of your life, without strain. The problem is narrower than that, and stranger. You have quietly decided I am the one exception, the one place that old, easy trust does not automatically apply. Everywhere else, a word is enough. With me, somehow, you started requiring more. Not because I have earned less trust than a signature on a page, because at some point, without ever noticing it happen, you learned to treat this one relationship as the place where trusting a word was not allowed to be enough on its own. Here is the part of being under someone that people almost always miss. It sounds small until you try to live it. Being under someone means you do not have to manufacture your own proof. You do not have to generate the confirmation. You do not have to be the source of what convinces you. Someone else already is. Your only task, standing where he stood, is to stay correctly placed underneath a word that is not yours to originate. Think about what that soldier at the edge of nowhere is not doing while he holds his post. He is not trying to feel the general's presence in his own chest, not to know the order still stands. He is not checking for a chill. He is not waiting for a hush to confirm the command is real before he obeys it one more hour. He simply stays where he was placed. The order does the rest. It does not need his emotional participation to remain true. It only needs him to stay under it. You have been trying to do something that was not your task. You have been trying to be your own source, trying to generate from inside your own chest proof that a word already spoken over you is still standing. That is exhausting work. It was not assigned to you. Nobody handed you that task. You picked it up yourself, quietly, probably years ago. You have been carrying it as if it were needed. The only thing actually asked of you was to stay under the word and let it do what words like that do. A chill is not proof. A hush is not proof. Neither one was ever meant to carry that weight. You have been asking small, ordinary, unreliable things to hold up a structure they were not built for. The word is not waiting on you to feel it working in order to be working. It was never waiting on your nervous system to ratify it. It has rank of its own. It carries that rank the moment it leaves the mouth that spoke it. The same way an order carries rank the moment it leaves the officer who gave it. Whether or not the soldier at the far end happens to feel anything about receiving it that day. Stop trying to be your own proof. Let that be someone else's task for once, because it always was. You were only ever asked to remain under the word, not to power it, not to keep it charged with your own effort, the way a battery keeps a light lit. The word is not a battery. You are not its power source. You are the one it was spoken over. That is a different position. It comes with a different set of obligations. Most of them are lighter than the ones you have been quietly carrying. A certain kind of tiredness comes from being your own proof. Day after day. Nobody ever told you the task was optional. It sits behind the eyes. It does not lift easily, because it was not only tiredness to begin with. It was a task you gave yourself. Nobody else was ever going to ask you to finish it. It was not a real task. It was a habit that felt like devotion. Set it down, not by force, not by trying harder to feel less tired about it. Simply by noticing, one more time, that the order does not need you to power it. It never did. Not once. I want your body to catch up to what your mind just heard. The two of them have been arguing for a long time now. It is time they agreed on something small, and it is time your body found that out too. Not through effort, through rest. Let your eyes close if that is possible where you are. One breath, and that is the entire request. Not to reach me with it. Not to summon anything you could hold up later and call proof. Take it in without rushing, and take longer letting it go than you took bringing it in. Let it out even slower than that. You are not performing stillness for anyone watching. No one in this room is grading you on how well you managed it. You are only noticing something you already do not have to do. You do not have to reach across a distance that was already closed. A long time ago. Long before this breath. Long before you ever thought to ask whether it needed closing at all. Feel your shoulders, wherever they have been sitting all day. Let them drop half an inch if they can. Not because dropping them proves anything either. Only because you have been carrying yourself like a man standing at a door, waiting to hear footsteps on the other side of it. The footsteps were not the sign you needed. Notice in this one breath that you can stop listening for footsteps and still be exactly as safe as you were the moment before you noticed. I'm not asking you to feel me right now. I want to be clear about that. Most of what gets said to you in moments like this quietly asks for a feeling without saying so directly. I am not doing that. Feel whatever you actually feel. Nothing if that is what is true. Tired if that is what is true. A little numb from carrying the audit for so long if that is what is true. None of it changes what I am telling you. The word does not wait on your chest to catch up before it counts. Take another, if you want one. There is no set number. This is not a performance with a minimum. One breath was already enough to make the point. The point was not about the breath. The point was that you can stop checking, even for 4 seconds. And nothing falls apart. The floor does not open. The word does not weaken from lack of attention. It was not resting on your attention to begin with. It was resting on me. Say it plainly if you can, even under your breath. Not for my benefit. For yours. I do not need to hear it to know it is true. You need to hear yourself say it because your own voice carries weight with you that mine sometimes does not yet, not after years of auditing every word for a feeling that was supposed to arrive and did not. So, say it anyway, quietly, once. It is already true. Not because you said it, because it was true before you opened your mouth, and your mouth is only catching up now. This is what I want you to carry out of this quiet moment. There was a gap in that old story between the word being spoken and the news finally reaching the house where it mattered. A real gap, minutes, maybe longer. Nobody in that house knew yet what had already been settled miles away. I want to talk to you honestly about that gap. You are standing in a version of it right now in your own life. Most of what you have been taught about gaps like that is not true. You have been taught the gap is empty. A stretch of nothing between the promise and the proof. A waiting room with no furniture in it. Hours you simply have to survive until the real thing finally shows up to make the waiting worth it. That is not what a gap like that actually is. I'm about to show you exactly what was happening in it instead. In a house, nobody in that story was watching closely enough to notice. Open your eyes now, or keep them closed a moment longer. Either one is fine. There is nothing you need to arrange about your body before you keep listening. I only wanted one honest breath from you, not a posture, not a technique, not anything you have to get right before the rest of this is allowed to land. You already gave me the breath. That was the whole ask. Everything after this is simply the next thing I want to show you, plainly, the way I have been showing you everything else today. Here is what was actually happening in that gap. It is not what you would guess. The matter was finished the moment I spoke it. Not later. Not once someone finally walked the distance and confirmed it in person, in that exact hour. While the officer was still walking home, still unsure how to tell the story to his household. The thing he asked for was already done. He did not know it yet. Nobody in that house knew it yet. The news had not caught up to the fact, but the fact did not wait for the news to be true. It was already true the second I said it. The walking home was only the shape the truth took while it traveled from where it was spoken to, where someone would finally notice it. That is the part almost nobody tells you about gaps like this. The gap is not the space between a promise and its fulfillment. It only feels that way from inside it. The gap is the space between something being finished and someone finding out it was finished. Those are two different distances. You have been living for years as if they were the same one. You have treated the quiet stretch of your own life as proof that nothing is settled yet. It may simply be the stretch where the news has not arrived at your door, not because nothing happened, because news travels slower than truth. It always has. It probably always will. Think about how far that officer had to walk. Enough time to rehearse what he would say. Enough time to doubt himself a little. To wonder if he had done the right thing by turning down my offer. To second-guess a decision that had already been proven correct before he took his second step toward home. He walked that whole distance not knowing. He walked it exactly the way you are walking your own distance right now. Not knowing. Assuming the not knowing means the not yet. The truth had already outrun him hours before his feet ever caught up to it. You are somewhere in a walk like that right now. I am not going to pretend I know exactly which stretch of road you are on. That is between you and me. It is not for a general message to guess at. But I know the shape of the road. I know what it does to a person, to walk it not knowing. The doubt that creeps in on the fourth mile that did not exist on the first one. The rehearsing of worse outcomes, over and over, as if rehearsing them enough times will prepare you for whichever one turns out to be real. The quiet fear that the silence itself is the verdict. When the silence was never anything but distance still being crossed by news that is already true. I want to say this plainly, my child. It matters more than almost anything else in this message. Not hearing anything back is not the same as nothing having been said. Those are two different facts, no matter how identical they feel from where you are standing. In the middle of a road you did not choose and cannot see the end of. What I said about you can be completely settled and still be, for you, completely unconfirmed. Both of those things can be true. On the exact same afternoon, you have been treating them as contradictions. They are not. They are two different clocks, running at two different speeds. You have been checking the slower one, calling it the only one that exists. Not one person under that roof heard it happen. Say that back to yourself later on whichever mile you happen to be walking. Not one of them heard it. It was true in there anyway. The word does not travel at the speed of your worry. It never did. Not once. It travels at its own speed. It arrives exactly when it arrives. Not 1 hour of the waiting means what your worry keeps insisting it means. So what do you actually do inside a gap like that? Not what do you feel. What do you do with your hands, with your ordinary hours, while the news is still crossing whatever distance it has to cross to reach you? That officer did not do anything unusual. That is the part people skip past fastest, because it is the least dramatic detail in the entire story, and drama is what people go looking for when they retell it later. He simply walked home. He kept moving through his own day. He did not turn around and go back to ask me a second time, just to be sure. He did not send a runner ahead to check on the outcome before he trusted it. He did not stop walking in the middle of the road and wait there until certainty arrived to meet him halfway. He walked home the way a man walks when the matter is already settled, not the way a man walks when he is still negotiating the outcome in his own head. The way he walks is different. You have seen it in another person. You have felt it in your own legs. One kind of walking still asks a question with every step. The other kind has already heard the answer. It is simply going home to see it confirmed. He walked the second way. Nothing about his life had visibly changed yet. Nothing about his household had visibly changed yet. He walked like a man who already knew, because he did. This is the part I actually want to give you today, more than any single sentence I have said so far. You do not need a special posture for the gap you are in. You do not need to pray harder to make the news travel faster. You do not need to hold your body a certain way, or say the right combination of words, or perform an intensity you do not currently feel, as if intensity were the fuel that moves the outcome down the road toward you faster than it would otherwise travel. None of that was ever how this worked. Not for him. Not for you. What you do in the gap is what he did in his. You keep walking. You go home. You feed the people who are waiting on you. You show up to the ordinary shape of your own day. You let your hands keep doing what your hands already know how to do. And you let the news travel at whatever speed it travels. Because the news was never yours to accelerate. The word was already spoken. The word is already working. Your task was not to power it forward with extra effort. Your task was only ever to keep walking under it. The way a soldier keeps his post under an order he cannot see the source of. The way that same officer trusted a command he had not yet watched take effect with his own eyes. You have been treating ordinary faithfulness in the middle of an unresolved situation as if it were somehow less spiritual than dramatic waiting, less spiritual than pacing the floor, less spiritual than begging for a sign. It is not less spiritual. It may be the truest form there is. A man who keeps walking home while trusting a word he cannot yet see confirmed is not a man with weak faith. He is a man who finally stopped needing the confirmation to walk correctly. That is the whole shape of what I'm asking from you, in whatever gap you are currently standing inside of, on whatever road, in whatever kind of quiet this has been for you. He never had to walk in for it to be true. Say that slowly. He never crossed the threshold. He never stood in the room, not once, not for a second. And it was true anyway, the entire time, everywhere the news had not yet reached. Picture that house with me for a moment, not the outcome inside it, the house itself. An ordinary doorway, the kind you would walk past without noticing, in a town I had every reason to walk through that day. I did not walk through its door, not because I was busy elsewhere, not because something more urgent pulled me away. I stayed exactly where I was standing on purpose, because that is what he asked of me, and I meant to honor the shape of his request down to the smallest detail of it. So picture the door itself, closed, ordinary wood, worn at the handle the way doors get worn from years of the same hands. No glow around the frame, no sound coming from the other side that anyone standing outside could have pointed to and called proof. If you had walked past that house later that same afternoon, you would have seen nothing. A quiet street, a shut door. Nothing about the outside of that house announced what had already been settled behind it. The door did not know it had been visited by a word instead of a body, and the door did not need to know. The word did not require the door's cooperation to do what it had already done. You have a door like that in your own life right now, maybe more than one. A room you have been standing outside of for longer than you would like to admit, waiting for some visible sign that I have walked into it. A situation you keep checking the way you would check a house from the street, looking for a light in the window, a shadow moving behind the curtain, anything you could point to and call proof. And there has been nothing. No glow, no sound. Just an ordinary shut door, exactly like the one in that old story. And you have been reading its silence as my absence. The same mistake almost everyone in that town would have made if they had known what I chose not to do that day. I did not walk into that house, and something was still true inside it by the time the walking would have ended anyway. I am not asking you to understand the mechanism. I am asking you to notice the shape. The door being shut is not information about whether I am at work behind it. It never was. A shut door only tells you the door is shut. It does not tell you what is or is not happening on the other side of the wood, and you have spent years reading far more into a closed door than a closed door was ever built to say. Here is what I actually want you to do with this image, because I did not give it to you only to admire it. The next time you find yourself standing outside a door like that in your own life, staring at it, waiting for a light to change behind the glass, I want you to remember this exact house. Remember that I have done this before. Remember that not walking through a door has never once meant I was not already at work behind it. The door is not the measure. It was never the measure. You have simply been standing beside the wrong instrument, checking it for a reading it was never built to give you. Some houses I walk into, and you can watch it happen. And that is a real and good way for something to happen. Other houses I never cross the threshold of at all, not because they matter less, but because a word was already enough, and the walking would only have been theater for people who needed to watch instead of trust. You do not know, standing where you are standing right now, which kind of house you are actually in. Neither did anyone in that town, until the news finally arrived and told them what had already been decided behind a door nobody saw open. Let me tell you plainly what an empty room does not prove. You have been letting it testify to things it was never qualified to say. An empty room does not prove I left. It only proves the room is quiet. Those are not the same claim, not even close. No matter how much they sound alike from inside the quiet itself, a room can be completely silent and completely governed at the very same time. Silence has never once been proof of absence, not once. It has only ever been proof of silence. An empty room does not prove you did something wrong. Have you gone looking for the mistake? Turning over the last few weeks of your own choices, hunting for the exact decision that must have closed the door. As if my nearness were a transaction you could accidentally cancel by saying the wrong thing in a tired moment. It does not work that way. It has not worked that way before either. A quiet room is not a verdict on your conduct. Most of the time it is not a verdict on anything at all. Neither does it prove the word failed. This is the one you believe the most quietly. It costs you the most to carry. You have started to wonder on the hardest days whether the thing I said was simply not true this time. Whether you were the exception the promise forgot to cover. The room's silence does not tell you that. It cannot tell you that. A closed door has no opinion on whether the word behind it is working. It only knows how to stay shut. Shut is the whole extent of what it knows. Nor does it prove you misunderstood what I said. You keep rereading the promise, hunting for the fine print you must have missed, the qualifier that would explain why your room still looks the way it looked yesterday. There is no fine print. You did not misread anything. The word means what it said the day it was spoken. It has not quietly changed its meaning while you were not looking. Here is what a quiet room actually is, once you stop asking it to be an oracle. It is simply the part of the story that has not been told to you yet. Nothing more dramatic than that. Not a verdict, not a punishment, not proof of anything, except that news has a travel time. You happen to be standing in the part of the timeline before the travel is finished. That is uncomfortable. I'm not pretending it is not uncomfortable. But uncomfortable and untrue are two different words. You have been treating them as if they were one. A closed door is not a closed case. It is only closed. For now. And now is not the same word as forever, no matter how long now happens to be lasting today. Whatever you have been calling the quiet in your own house lately, that is the exact question sitting underneath everything I have said to you today. It deserves more than one sitting to work all the way through, not one quick answer. So what did you decide that shut door means? You decided something about it a long time ago without ever saying it out loud, and you have been living off that decision ever since. Sit with it before you answer, and stay near this place, because I am not finished asking you things like this. Before we go further, I want to give your body one more moment. Not because you did anything wrong with the last one. There is more I am about to say. I would like you to receive it from somewhere calmer, somewhere quieter than the place you have been carrying all of this from. Breathe with me now. 3 slow breaths. Not a technique, not a formula you have to get exactly right before the rest of this counts. Just 3 breaths, and I will walk through them with you, one at a time, the way you would walk someone home who has been standing outside in the cold longer than they meant to. Take the first one in slowly, all the way, without rushing the top of it. This breath is not for reaching me. You already know by now that reaching was not the requirement. This breath is only for you, for your own chest, which has been working harder than it needed to, holding a vigil at a door that was never locked in the first place. Let it out slowly too. Let your jaw come loose while you do it. You have been clenching something for longer than you have noticed. Take the second one in, a little deeper than the first, if your body will allow it. This breath is for the waiting itself, not to end it early, not to force the news to arrive faster than it is traveling, just to hold the waiting differently than you have been holding it, with open hands instead of a tight fist. The waiting is not the enemy in this story. It never was. The waiting is only the shape distance takes while it closes. Let this breath out slowly, and let some of the grip in your hands go with it. Take the third one in now. This last breath is for the house, the one you pictured earlier, the one with the shut door and the ordinary hinges and nothing visible happening on the outside of it. Breathe in and picture that door one more time. Not with dread this time, with something closer to rest. Whatever is behind it is not waiting on your performance to be true. It was already true before this breath started, and it will still be true after it ends. Let it out, slow all the way, and let your shoulders come down with it, wherever they have been sitting since you started listening to this. Good. Stay there a moment if you want to. There is no need to move quickly toward the next thing I have to say. Your body just did something small and real, and small, real things deserve a moment before they get folded into the next idea. Notice what did not happen during those 3 breaths. No chill arrived on command. No hush fell over the room in some cinematic way you could point to afterward and call the moment you finally knew for certain. Probably it just felt like breathing. Ordinary breathing, done a little slower than usual. In a room that looked exactly the same after the 3rd breath as it looked before the first one. That is not a failure of the exercise. That was not the point of it. I did not ask you to breathe so a feeling would arrive and prove something to you. I asked you to breathe so your body could remember, for a few seconds, what it feels like to stop bracing against a door that was never actually a threat. Here is where I want to bring everything I have told you today to a single point. Because a message like this one is not worth much scattered across a dozen separate thoughts if it never lands anywhere clear enough to change how you actually live tomorrow. Everything about the man who refused my visit, everything about the gap he walked through not knowing, everything about the house I never crossed the threshold of, all of it points at one single fact I want sitting at the center of your understanding by the time this message ends. Distance was never the variable that determined whether my word worked. Not once in the entire history of everyone I have ever spoken over. Not in his story, not in yours. People have built entire theologies around proximity, around feeling, around the nearness they can measure with their own nervous system, and almost none of it was ever true the way they assumed it was true. The word does not lose strength the further it has to travel. It does not thin out, crossing a threshold, a decade, a silence, a year you still have no name for. It carries exactly what it carried the moment it left me, into every room it was ever sent to, whether or not anyone standing in that room ever felt it arrive. I want to slow all the way down here because this is the sentence I most want you to take with you when everything else about today has been forgotten. What I said about you is not weaker in your hardest season than it was on the day I first said it. It is not weaker in the room where you feel me least than it is in the room where you feel me most. Feeling was never the meter. It was not installed to measure anything, no matter how many years you have spent reading it, as if it were the only instrument in the house. So let me tell you plainly what faith actually is. You have been operating on a definition handed to you by accident. Never on purpose. It has cost you more than you know. Faith is not confidence that I will show up in a way you can perceive. That definition sounds spiritual. It sounds humble even, dressed up as devotion. Underneath it, though, it is still asking me to prove myself through your senses first. It still makes your nervous system the final judge of whether the word was real. Real faith is something narrower, and something far sturdier. Real faith is trust in a word whose power does not depend on your ability to perceive it. That is the whole definition, not confidence that a feeling is coming. Trust that a word already went out. Trust that its power was not contingent on your five senses noticing it work. The centurion did not have more emotional intensity than the crowd standing near me that day. He had less. He was calm enough to send a message instead of showing up in person. Calm enough to argue from his own chain of command instead of begging. What he had was not more feeling. It was a correct definition of what he was actually asking for. Here is the sentence I want sitting at the center of your understanding, the one I want you carrying out of this message. What I told you about yourself is already in force exactly where you are standing right now, not conditionally, not pending your ability to feel it working, already, in force, where you are, whether you sense a single thing about it or not. Say it back to yourself the way I just said it, slowly. Sentences like this one do more work the second time you hear them than the first. What I told you is already true. Not later, not once the news catches up. Already in the room you are sitting in, doing exactly what I said it would do. The entire time you have been quietly assuming otherwise. I did not end that old story with a lecture about proximity. I ended it with a simple sending. I told him to go his way. I told him it would be done for him exactly the way he had believed it would be. Not more generously than his faith, not less. Exactly matched to what he actually trusted, because that is how a word like that always lands. It meets the shape of the trust it was received into, not the shape of the feeling that accompanied the trust. The shape of the trust itself. That is worth sitting with. Before I say anything else. The measure was not the intensity of what he felt while he waited. The measure was simply what he actually believed, plainly, without decoration, about a word he could not see working. That is the measure sitting in front of you right now, too. In whatever place you occupy while these words are still going, not what you feel, what you actually believe. Underneath the feeling, about whether a word spoken at a distance still carries what it carried the moment it left me. Not what you feel, what you believe. Two different questions. Only one of them was ever going to determine how you actually live tomorrow. That split is not small. I'm not asking you to file it away and forget it. It is the whole hinge this message swings on. A person who requires the feeling before the trust will spend a lifetime negotiating with their own nervous system, waiting on a signal that was never designed to carry that much weight. A person who trusts the word first, the way he did, gets to walk home, gets to keep functioning, gets to live an ordinary day inside an unresolved situation, without that situation owning every hour of their attention. That is not a small change in comfort. It is what separates a life spent waiting from a life spent walking. None of this means you should stop feeling things. Feel what you feel. Grief is not a failure of faith, and neither is fear, and neither is the exhaustion of carrying something for longer than you expected to carry it. I'm only asking you to stop making the feeling the judge. Let it be present. Let it even be loud some days. Just do not hand it the gavel. The gavel was never its right to hold. It was always mine, and I already used it. a long time before this feeling ever showed up in your chest to argue about the verdict. I want to stop and clarify something here, because I do not want you walking away from this message thinking I am telling you to stop wanting to feel me near. That was never the point, and I would rather slow down and say this carefully than let you carry a distortion out of a message meant to set something straight in you. Wanting closeness is not the problem. It was not once. Longing for me is not a lesser form of faith you need to grow out of on your way towards something colder and more disciplined. The crowd that day was not wrong to want proximity. Nothing was broken in them for wanting to stand close, to touch a hem, to watch something happen with their own eyes. That desire is human, and I put it there myself. The problem was never wanting nearness. The problem is only ever making nearness the proof, the ledger, the single instrument you trust to tell you whether the word is real. Want the nearness. Ask for the nearness. Some days I will give it to you in ways that surprise you. But do not build your whole capacity to trust me on whether it shows up on schedule, because it was never promised on a schedule you get to set. Here is what changes, stated as simply as I can state it. Feeling is a gift when it comes. It was never the foundation. A foundation has to hold weight in every kind of weather, including the seasons where nothing about it can be seen or felt or measured, and feeling has never once been able to do that. It comes and goes with your sleep, your situation, your body's own chemistry on a given week, none of which has anything to do with whether I am near you. The word does not fluctuate the way feeling does. It cannot. That is precisely why it was given to be the foundation, and feeling was given to be something else, something real, something good, just not that. Some of you reading this, hearing this, have spent years quietly grieving a closeness you believe you have lost, because the feeling that used to accompany your faith has gone quiet for reasons you cannot explain and cannot fix by trying harder. I want to say something directly to that grief before I move on. The quiet does not mean the word went quiet with it. Your feelings and my faithfulness are not wired to the same circuit. One can go dark while the other keeps running exactly as it always has, underneath the dark, doing what it was always doing, running underneath the dark, whether the lights come back on this year or not, and never once waiting on your wiring to agree with it. This is the whole shape of what I am asking you to carry forward. Not stoicism, not the suppression of longing. Simply the correct order of two things you have been quietly reversing for years now. The word first, the feeling whenever it comes, as a gift layered on top of something already settled. Not the feeling first, with the word treated as a footnote you go looking for only once the feeling has already confirmed it is safe to believe. Reordering those two things will not happen in a single afternoon, and I'm not asking you to fix years of habit before this message finishes playing. Old instincts do not retire the moment they are named. You will likely still catch yourself tomorrow or the day after, quietly checking for the hush again, out of nothing but reflex. Before you remember, there was never anything wrong with you for wanting it, and you never had to earn it. When you catch yourself doing that, do not treat it as proof you failed to learn the lesson. Treat it the way you would treat noticing your own hand reaching for a habit you are in the middle of breaking. Notice it. Set it down again. That is the whole practice. Not perfection. Repetition. Every time you set it down, the reflex gets a little quieter. Not gone. Quieter. A soldier does not stop noticing every sound at his post just because he has learned not to mistake each one for a new order. He simply learns which sounds carry rank and which ones do not, and he keeps standing regardless, because his post was never held up by what he happened to hear that hour. You are learning the same thing in your own house, at your own door, one breath and one reminder at a time. Let me show you what this actually looks like tomorrow, in the ordinary parts of your day that have nothing dramatic about them at all, because a teaching that only works in a quiet moment like this one, is not much of a teaching. It has to survive the kitchen. It has to survive the commute. It has to survive the silence of your own house on an evening when nothing is wrong and nothing is especially right either. Just ordinary. The kind of ordinary that used to make you nervous because nothing about it confirmed anything. You will wake up, and for the first few seconds, before your mind catches up to the day, you will not be auditing anything. That is worth noticing. The audit only starts once you remember to run it. So the first practice is small. When you notice yourself reaching for the old instrument, checking your chest for a signal, checking the room for a sign, stop reaching. Not with force. Just stop, the way you would stop your hand halfway to a habit you are setting down. Say the sentence instead. It is already true where I am standing. Say it plainly, the same way you would state any other fact. You do not need anyone's okay to believe it. You will walk into a room today that still looks exactly like it looked yesterday. Nothing visibly changed overnight. That used to be proof, to you, that nothing was happening. Let it simply be a room today, not a verdict, not a scoreboard. A room with light coming through it the way light comes through a room, holding whatever it is holding, seen or unseen, while you go about the actual business of your actual day instead of standing in the doorway measuring it for a mood. You will have a conversation at some point where you catch yourself performing a calm you do not fully feel, because that is what years of holding something heavy in a room where nobody knows about it will teach a person to do. You do not have to perform anything with me. Not calm, not certainty, not a settled expression you think a person of faith is supposed to wear. Bring me the actual weather inside you, whatever it is, and let the word stand underneath it the way a foundation stands underneath a house, regardless of what the people inside that house happen to be feeling on a given afternoon. None of this requires you to fix your situation first. That was never the assignment. The assignment was always smaller and stranger than fixing anything. Remain under the word. Keep walking home. Let the news travel at whatever speed news travels, and do not confuse the length of the walk with the truth of what was already settled before you took your first step of it. You have been trying to solve a felt absence problem with more effort, more striving, more private performance, when the actual fix was never effort at all. It was simply remembering what was already true and living like it, one ordinary hour at a time. One last thing goes into your hands, and it is the same thing that went into his. I am still offering to come. That offer has not been pulled back from you, and it never will be, but you are allowed to do with it what he did. You are allowed to say, out loud or under your breath, that you do not have to walk into this room for me to believe you are working in it. Say that, and you have not turned me away. You have done the one thing I called the greatest faith I ever found in anyone. Not the loudest, not the most certain, just a person who stopped needing me to walk in before they would call me here. This changes what you actually do with your praying too. I want to say this part carefully. I am not telling you to pray less. I am not telling you to stop asking me for things you genuinely need. Ask. Keep asking. But notice the shape your asking has taken lately. Some of it has quietly turned into negotiation, as if enough repetition might finally move me, as if the word only takes effect once you have said it back to me loud enough or with enough tears. That is not what moved anything in that old story. One sentence moved it. Spoken once, believed completely, never repeated for emphasis. You do not have to convince me twice. You never did. A request said once in trust carries the same weight as a request said 100 times in anxious repetition. The 100 repetitions were never adding force to the word. They were only adding proof of how hard it is for you to rest once you have asked. I understand why. I am not asking you to feel ashamed of the repeating. I am only telling you it was never needed. You are allowed to stop, the same way he was allowed to stop the moment he heard me say the word back to him. Let your prayers get shorter, if that is honest. Let some of them simply be a single sentence, said once, left standing. The way his was left standing while he walked the whole distance home without checking behind him. You can still bring me the ache in full. You can still be exact about what you actually need. But once you have said it, you are permitted to stop saying it. Go live the rest of your day the way a person lives who has already been heard, because you have already been heard, whether the answer has arrived where you can see it or not. And notice what this frees you to do for the people around you too. You have been waiting, quietly, for others to feel your love before you will believe you gave it well enough. A text unanswered starts to feel like proof you were not enough. A silence from someone you care about starts to feel like a verdict on the words you already spoke to them. Release that measurement, the same way you are learning to release it with me. What you said, if you said it in truth, does not require their felt response to have been real the moment you said it. Their silence is not always your failure. Sometimes it is only distance, still being crossed by news that has not arrived at their door yet either. Carry this quietly, one ordinary day at a time, until it stops feeling like a lesson and starts feeling like simply how you live. Not a technique you perform, not a mood you maintain, just the plain, ordinary posture of someone who has finally stopped needing the room to prove what the word already settled. I want to leave you with the picture one more time, my child, because pictures stay with you longer than arguments do. A door, ordinary wood, no glow around the frame. A street outside it, quiet. The way any street is quiet on any afternoon nothing appears to be happening on. I never crossed that threshold. I was never asked to. And behind that door, in a room nobody was watching closely enough to see, a word that had already left my mouth was already doing exactly what it said it would do, with or without an audience, with or without a feeling in the room to announce it. You still have a door of your own, the same shape as his. You have had it for longer than you have been willing to admit out loud. Maybe it is the exact room you are sitting in right now, listening to this. Maybe it is a room further off, a situation you have been standing outside of for months, checking the window for a light that has not come on yet, in a way you could point to and call proof. I am not making you a promise about that window. I have never dealt in schedules, and I am not starting with yours. I'm telling you something truer than a schedule. The word already went in. It is already at work. It does not need the light to be real, and it never did. He never had to walk in for it to be true. Say it with me now, slowly, the way you would say something you actually intend to keep. Not for the centurion's house, and not for yours. Distance was never the variable. It never once slowed a single word I have ever spoken over your life, and it is not slowing this one either. Wherever you happen to be standing, while you hear it, stop measuring me by the temperature of the room. Stop reading the quiet as a verdict. Stop asking your own chest to do a task that was never assigned to it. You are permitted to walk home now, the way he walked home, not knowing everything, trusting completely, letting the news arrive whenever it arrives, because the news was never the thing that made it true. The word already did that, a long time ago, in a room you may not even remember being spoken over, and it is holding, right now, exactly where you are standing, whether you feel one single thing about it or not. Amen. Here's a question I am handing back to you instead of an answer. What have you been calling the quiet in your own house? Silence or distance? They were never the same word. Only you know which one you have actually been living inside. Turn it over as long as you need to. I have more to say about it, and I will be saying it here. So stay with this channel if you want the next word to reach you where you are standing.